The palace was silent, but the silence was not peaceful. It was heavy, thick, and full of eyes that Daniel could not see. He walked slowly through the golden hallway, his boots echoing against the marble floor, each step louder than the last. The walls were covered in carvings, ancient symbols glowing faintly, telling stories of wars long before his time. Chandeliers burned with alien fire above his head, casting shadows that seemed to move on their own. Daniel's chest tightened. He knew he was being watched. He could feel it. Every breath, every step, someone's gaze followed him. He had been summoned, not requested, not invited, summoned. And in this galaxy, when the alien queen summoned someone, it was never for something simple. No one disobeyed her command. Those who tried were never seen again. Daniel tried to steady his breath. He was a soldier, trained to face danger, but this was different. This was not a battlefield of guns and ships. This was her palace, her kingdom, where her word was law and her gaze could cut deeper than any blade. He told himself to stay calm, but his heart was racing faster with every step. At the end of the hallway, two massive doors stood, made of black metal that shimmered like liquid. Alien guards flanked the doors, their eyes glowing, their weapons sharp and silent. Without a word, they opened the doors as he approached, and Daniel stepped inside. The room was vast. The ceiling stretched high, golden pillars reaching toward the heavens. And at the center, standing like a figure from myth, was the queen. Her skin glowed violet in the warm light, her hair like silver fire cascading over her shoulders. She wore a black crown, sharp and elegant, resting proudly on her head. But it wasn't her crown or her beauty that made Daniel freeze. It was her eyes, piercing, unblinking, and locked onto him the moment he entered. She moved, slowly, with purpose. Each step echoed like a heartbeat, steady and powerful. She did not speak. At first, she didn't need to. Her presence alone filled the room, commanding every breath, every thought. Daniel swallowed hard but stood tall. He was human. He would not show fear. Yet, when she reached him, he could not stop his body from reacting. His muscles tensed. His breath caught. She was taller than he expected, close enough now that he could see the faint glow of her skin, the sharp curve of her lips. Without warning, she lifted her arm and slammed it against the golden wall beside his head. The sound cracked through the silence, echoing across the chamber. Daniel froze. His back pressed against the wall, her hand firm, her presence overwhelming. She was so close now that he could hear the soft rhythm of her breath, feel the weight of her gaze. Her voice finally came low and sharp, every word carrying power that seemed to shake the very air. "Don't you dare love anyone else." The words cut through him, more shocking than any order, more terrifying than any threat. Daniel blinked, his mind racing. Was this a warning, a command, a confession? His heart pounded in his chest, louder than the silence around them. The queen's eyes narrowed as she studied his face. She was not asking. She was not pleading. She was declaring. Her tone was not one of jealousy. It was one of possession, as if she had already claimed him, as if his heart, his soul, his entire being belonged to her and her alone. Daniel tried to speak, but his words caught in his throat. Every instinct told him to move, to resist, but his body stayed frozen. Not from fear alone, but from the strange pull in her gaze. There was fire there, yes, but also something deeper, something human. The silence stretched on. Her hand remained, pressed against the wall, her body inches from his. He could smell the faint scent of something sweet, alien but familiar, drifting from her hair. His mind screamed at him to resist, but his chest burned with confusion, with questions he could not answer. Why him? Out of the billions across the stars, why had she chosen him? Was it because he was human, a symbol of defiance in a galaxy that often mocked his kind? Or was it something else, something hidden behind her warning? The queen leaned closer, her voice softer now, but even sharper than before. "You are mine. Remember that." Daniel's breath hitched. He wanted to protest, to push back, to demand answers, but her words pinned him as tightly as her hand against the wall. He felt the weight of her claim sink into him, heavy, dangerous, but strangely intoxicating. For a moment, the galaxy outside did not exist. There was no war, no soldiers, no palace guards. There was only her violet skin glowing against the golden walls, her silver hair falling like rivers of light, her eyes burning into his soul. Then, as quickly as she had cornered him, she stepped back. Her hand slid from the wall, her crown catching the light as she turned away. She walked toward her throne, her voice carrying one last warning that echoed in his mind. "Test me, and you will see what happens." Daniel stood frozen, his back still against the wall, his chest heaving. He had faced battles, commanders, even death itself, but never this, never her. And as the great doors closed behind him, he knew one thing for certain. His life had just changed forever. The palace halls felt colder after the encounter, but Daniel's chest still burned from the Queen's words. Every step he took away from the throne room echoed like a reminder of what had just happened. "Don't you dare love anyone else." The sentence replayed in his mind, heavy and unshakable. He told himself it was only a warning, a show of power, but deep down he knew it was more. Her voice had carried not only command, but something else, something personal, almost desperate. The next morning, Daniel was summoned again. He had hardly slept. Shadows under his eyes told the story of a restless night, but when the guards arrived at his door, he had no choice. No one ignored her call. They led him to a grand balcony that overlooked the alien city below. The skies shimmered with strange lights, ships rising and falling in patterns that seemed like dance. At the center of the balcony, the Queen stood tall, her back to him, her crown catching the glow of the morning. She did not turn immediately when he arrived. Instead, she let him wait, let him feel the weight of her silence. When she finally faced him, her violet skin glowed in the soft light, her silver hair moving gently with the wind. She raised her chin, her eyes locking on his. "Walk with me," she said, her tone firm but not unkind. Daniel followed her down the balcony, past guards who bowed their heads as she passed. Her presence commanded everything. Every servant, every soldier, even the air seemed to bend to her will. But beside her, Daniel felt strangely exposed. He was the only human here, surrounded by creatures who whispered and stared. As they walked, the Queen spoke. "Do you know why you are here?" she asked without looking at him. Daniel hesitated. "Because you summoned me, Your Majesty." Her lips curved into the faintest smile. "Yes, but that is not the only reason. Do you think I summon humans? Often. Do you think anyone else has stood where you stood yesterday?" He said nothing, but his mind screamed with questions. The Queen stopped suddenly and turned to him. Her eyes burned with that same fire as before. "You belong to me now. No one else, do you understand?" Daniel felt his chest tighten. The words struck like chains, yet there was something in her tone, a strange softness buried beneath the steel. "Why me?" he finally asked, his voice low. For a moment her face shifted. The proud, untouchable mask of the Queen cracked just enough to show something beneath it, something human. But just as quickly it was gone. She turned her gaze back toward the horizon. "Because the others are liars, because they kneel to me out of fear. You stand." Her words left him silent. She had seen it in him, his refusal to bow, his refusal to break, even under her gaze. And instead of punishing him, she had chosen him. They walked further, her hand brushing lightly against his arm, an action so small yet so heavy it made his heart pound. The whispers around them grew louder, alien servants watching with wide eyes. Some looked shocked, others fearful. A human at the Queen's side. It was unthinkable, but she did not care. She wanted them to see. She wanted the galaxy to know. Later, she led him to the palace gardens, a place filled with glowing flowers that shifted colors in the light. Strange birds with silver wings fluttered through the air, their cries sharp but beautiful. The queen sat on a marble bench and motioned for him to stand before her. "Daniel," she said, her voice lower now, almost gentle. "In this galaxy, people will try to take what is mine. They will try to use you, twist you, break you, but I will not allow it. You are mine. And as long as I live, no one else will touch you." Her words sent a chill through him, yet also something else, a strange, unwanted comfort. She was fierce, terrifying, and possessive, but she was also protective. He could see it in her eyes, the way they softened for just a second when they met his. Daniel wanted to resist. He wanted to tell her he did not belong to anyone, but when he opened his mouth, no words came. Instead, he only nodded, slowly, unsure of himself. The queen leaned forward, her hand resting against his chest, just over his heart. "This beats for me now," she whispered. "Remember that." Daniel's breath caught. Her touch was fire, not painful, but burning into him, leaving a mark he could not erase. He wanted to pull away, but at the same time, part of him didn't want to. Then, without warning, her expression hardened again. She rose to her feet, tall and commanding, the moment of softness gone. "Come," she ordered. "The court awaits." As she led him back inside, Daniel's thoughts spun wildly. What was happening to him? What was she doing to him? He was supposed to be strong, unshaken, but she was breaking him down in ways he could not fight. And deep inside, a question grew louder. Was he her prisoner or her chosen one? Daniel walked beside the queen as the massive doors of the court opened. The chamber was alive with whispers, every alien noble dressed in shimmering robes of color, their eyes sharp and full of curiosity. The moment they saw him, the whispers grew louder. A human standing next to their queen, so close it seemed impossible. Some looked shocked, some outraged, and some even fearful. But no one dared to speak against her. The queen did not acknowledge their murmurs. She held her head high, her crown glimmering under the great lights. With every step, she made her claim clear. Daniel was hers, and she wanted everyone to see it. Daniel, however, felt the weight of 1,000 eyes pressing down on him. He wanted to shrink back, but the queen's hand brushed lightly against his arm, a signal to stay firm. They reached the throne. She sat gracefully, her gaze sweeping over the crowd like a storm. Daniel stood at her side, uncertain, his hands tight at his sides. The queen's voice rang out, strong and unyielding. "This human," she declared, her tone sharp enough to cut stone, "stands under my protection. He belongs to me, and anyone who dares test this—" She paused, her eyes narrowing. "Will answer to me." The room fell silent. No one moved. No one dared to breathe too loudly. Daniel's chest tightened. Protection? Possession? He could not tell the difference anymore. Later, when the court ended, the queen led Daniel back through a smaller passage away from the grand halls. Her guards followed, but the corridor was darker, colder, the walls lined with strange markings that pulsed faintly like veins. Here, the silence felt different. Not heavy, but dangerous. The queen slowed her steps and leaned close. "Listen carefully, Daniel," she whispered. "Not everyone in this palace wishes you to live." The words froze him. He turned his head sharply, searching her eyes for answers. "What do you mean?" he asked. "There are enemies here," she said, her voice low and serious. "They smile at me in the court. They bow to me in the halls. But they watch you. They wait for you to make a mistake. And when you do, they will strike. Not only at you, but at anyone close to you." Daniel's breath caught. It wasn't jealousy alone that drove her warning. It was survival. He felt a chill run down his spine. "Why me?" he asked again, this time his voice sharper, almost demanding. The queen stopped walking. For the first time since he had met her, her face softened, the fierce fire dimming just slightly. "Because you are human," she said simply. "Your kind is different. You do not bend so easily. You do not hide behind false smiles. You look at me as though I am not untouchable." Daniel's chest tightened. She was right. He had not bowed, not even when fear pressed against his ribs like iron. And maybe that was why she chose him. But he could not tell if this was a gift or a curse. They reached a shadowed chamber, smaller than the throne room, lined with golden pillars and glowing lanterns. The queen dismissed her guards with a flick of her hand. When the doors closed, only silence remained between them. "Daniel," she said quietly, stepping closer, "my enemies would use you to hurt me. They would poison you, tempt you, twist you into a weapon against me. That is why I warned you, not because I fear you loving another, but because if you do, they will destroy you. And I will destroy them." Her words struck deep, heavier than chains. She was not protecting him only out of care. She was protecting him out of fury, out of fire that would burn worlds to ash if she had to. Daniel's hands curled into fists. He wanted to protest, to tell her he was not a possession, but his voice failed him, because part of him understood. He had seen the way the nobles stared at him. Their gazes were not just curious. They were hungry, waiting, calculating. The queen's hand lifted once more, resting against the wall near his shoulder, pinning him again, but this time her voice was softer. "You are in my world now. And in my world, weakness is death. Stay close to me, and you will live. Stray." Her lips curved into the faintest smile, "And you will not." Daniel's heart pounded. He should have felt anger, resistance, but what he felt instead was confusion. Because under her fire, under her dominance, there was something else. A hidden plea. That night, as he lay awake in his chambers, the shadows seemed alive. He could not shake the feeling of eyes watching him from the corners of the palace. He remembered her warning, the way her hand pressed against the wall beside him, the way her voice trembled with something she did not want to show. Enemies in the court. Enemies in the shadows. And an alien queen who had claimed him not just with power, but with something deeper, something he could not yet name. Daniel closed his eyes, but sleep did not come. The queen's words echoed again in his mind. "You are mine, and I will not let them take you." The days inside the palace grew longer, but Daniel could not tell if it was the silence or the queen's presence that pressed hardest on his chest. Every hallway he walked through carried whispers. The servants stared when they thought he could not see. The guards followed him with glowing eyes, and the nobles sneered behind fake smiles. To them, he was not one of their kind. He was a weakness, a danger, a human who should not stand beside their queen. But the queen ignored them. She moved through her world with her head high, and wherever she went, Daniel was always close behind. It was no longer an accident. It was her command. She made sure he walked beside her, made sure the palace saw them together. And the more she showed him to the world, the more he felt her claim tightening around him. One evening, she summoned him to her private chamber. The room was different from the throne hall. There was no crown here, no golden walls, no crowd of nobles. Instead, a single fire burned low in the corner, throwing long shadows across the floor. The silence was softer here, less heavy, almost human. Daniel stepped inside cautiously. The queen was not wearing her crown. Her silver hair flowed freely, catching the glow of the firelight. For the first time, she looked less like a ruler and more like a woman. But the fire in her eyes remained. "Sit," she said, motioning toward a seat carved from black stone. Daniel obeyed, though unease twisted in his stomach. He tried to speak, to ask why she had brought him here, but she cut him off with a single look. Her gaze silenced him more than any order. She walked closer, each step measured, deliberate, until she stood before him. Without warning, she placed her hand against his chest. His breath caught. The touch was firm, yet it carried heat that spread through him like fire. "Do you know why I chose you?" she asked quietly. Daniel swallowed, his throat dry. "Because I didn't bow," he said. Her lips curved into a faint smile, but it was not amusement. It was something else, something softer. Yes, you did not bow. You are strong, Daniel. But strength alone is not why I keep you here. I have fought wars, crushed empires, silenced entire fleets, and yet— She leaned closer, her voice dropping. When I look at you, I feel something I cannot name. Daniel's heart pounded so loudly, he thought she could hear it. Fear, battled with something else, something dangerous, a pull he could not resist. Her presence was overwhelming, but in this quiet room it was not her power that pressed against him. It was her closeness, her warmth, her unspoken need. He forced himself to speak. "You don't own me," he said, though his voice trembled. Her eyes flared, sharp as fire, and for a moment he thought she might strike him. Instead, she pressed him back against the wall, her hand firm against his chest. "Don't I?" she whispered. "Every time you breathe, you remember my words. Every time you close your eyes, you see my face. Tell me I am wrong." Daniel wanted to deny it. He wanted to push her away, to prove she did not control him. But the truth pressed harder than her hand. He had thought of her, every night, every moment. Her warning echoed in his mind, her voice burned into him. He hated it, he needed it. The Queen's eyes softened just for a second. Her voice trembled as she whispered, "I have no right to want this, but I cannot stop." Daniel's chest rose and fell quickly, his body frozen between resistance and desire. He told himself she was dangerous, that she was only using him. Yet as her face hovered close, as her words cracked with something real, he saw more than a queen. He saw a woman who had carried the weight of an empire and now clung to him as her only weakness. The firelight flickered, painting her skin in shades of gold and violet. Daniel's breath brushed against hers. He knew he should move, should break free, but he didn't. His fear mixed with something else, something he had not felt in years. The Queen's hand slid slowly from his chest to his shoulder, her touch softer now. "Do not betray me," she whispered. "If I lose you, I will burn this galaxy to ashes." Her words should have terrified him, and they did, but they also stirred something deeper. He felt trapped, claimed, but also strangely wanted. For the first time, Daniel looked into her eyes and did not see only fire. He saw loneliness, a loneliness buried so deep it hid behind power and steel. And in that moment he realized the truth. She was not just holding him because of strength or pride. She was holding him because she needed him. Daniel's heart raced. His lips parted, but no words came. All he could do was stare back, caught in the storm of her gaze. The silence stretched between them, thick and unbroken, until at last she stepped back. The mask of the Queen slid over her face again, the softness hidden, the fire restored. "Go," she commanded, her tone sharp once more. "Tomorrow the court will test you. Be ready." Daniel left her chamber with unsteady steps. His body trembled, his mind in chaos. She had claimed him with words, with fire, with power. But tonight she had claimed him with something far more dangerous, her heart. The morning came heavy with silence. The palace was restless, though no one dared to speak it aloud. Daniel felt the weight of unease pressing down on him as he walked through the golden halls. Guards glanced at him more often than before, their glowing eyes sharp and watchful. Something was different today. He could feel it in the air, thick and waiting. When he entered the throne room, the Queen was already there. She stood tall, her crown glimmering, but her gaze was sharper than ever. She dismissed her servants with a wave of her hand, and soon, only Daniel remained in the vast chamber. "Today," she said, her voice carrying the edge of steel, "they will test you." Daniel frowned. "Who?" Her violet eyes narrowed. "Those who hide in the shadows of my court. They think I cannot see their schemes. They think you are weak. They think you are nothing more than a human I dragged from the dust. But they are wrong. And today, they will show their hand." Before Daniel could speak, the doors burst open. A group of alien assassins stormed inside, their weapons glowing with deadly light. Daniel's heart leapt, his body moving on instinct, but before he could draw breath, the queen was already in motion. She moved like fire unleashed. Her hands blazed with power, her strikes sharp and merciless. The golden hall shook as she fought, each blow sending enemies crashing into the marble walls. Their weapons meant nothing against her fury. But even as she fought, one assassin broke through. He lunged at Daniel, his blade raised high. Daniel froze for a heartbeat, then ducked. Grabbing a fallen spear from the ground, he swung with everything he had, the weapon clashing against the assassin's arm. The alien staggered, but before Daniel could finish, the queen was there. She struck the assassin down with such force the ground cracked beneath him. The battle ended as quickly as it began. The assassins lay broken across the hall, the air thick with smoke and fire. Daniel's chest heaved as he leaned on the spear, sweat running down his face. The queen turned to him, her eyes burning brighter than ever. She crossed the hall in long strides, her crown tilted, her skin glowing with fury. She stopped in front of him, and once again, she pinned him against the wall, her hand slamming beside his head. But this time her voice trembled, not with rage, but with something far more dangerous. "Do you see now?" she whispered, her breath quick, her eyes wide. "This is why you cannot belong to anyone else. This is why I warned you. If they cannot take you, they will kill you. And I—" Her voice broke for just a moment. "I cannot lose you." Daniel stared at her, the truth finally clear. Her warning had never been only about control. It had never been just about power. Beneath the fire, beneath the crown, she had spoken out of fear. Fear of losing the only thing in the galaxy that made her feel alive. "You don't need to chain me," Daniel said softly, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. "If I stay, it won't be because you command it. It will be because I choose to." The queen's hand pressed harder against the wall, her jaw tightening. For a moment it seemed she would not accept his words, but then her shoulders dropped and the fire in her eyes shifted into something deeper, something raw. "You are mine," she whispered again, but the edge was gone from her tone. It was not a demand anymore. It was a plea. Daniel lifted his hand, slowly, and touched hers. Her fingers trembled against the wall, her strength faltering just for him. In the silence he realized what she truly was, not untouchable, not invincible, but lonely. A ruler feared by all, yet desperate for someone who saw her as more than a crown. The great doors creaked open again as her guards rushed inside, ready to defend her. But when they saw their queen standing so close to the human, their steps faltered. She raised her hand, silencing them without a word. Her eyes never left Daniel's. "Leave us," she ordered. The guards bowed and withdrew, leaving the two of them alone in the broken hall. The queen leaned closer, her forehead almost touching his. "If you betray me, if you walk away, I will tear the stars apart to bring you back. But if you stay," her lips curved into the faintest trembling smile, "I will give you everything." Daniel's chest rose and fell, his heart pounding, but he did not look away. For the first time he understood her, not as a queen, not as a conqueror, but as a woman who had carried too much for too long. And in that moment, with her hand trembling against the wall beside him, Daniel knew his life was no longer his own. It was hers. Forever.